Program in store for you. Yes, a program that has to do with allergies and other conditions. You be sure and stay tuned because it's a dynamic show. We have doctors here to take your questions. Stay tuned. I'm Larry Rice, and here's help.
You can climb every mountain, every goal you can achieve, every dream you dare imagine. You can have anything when you believe. So rise up today in victory, and by faith sow your seeds. Like the eagle so high, you were made to soar the sky. You can do anything, you can do anything, you can do anything when you believe.
Are you allergic to something? How do you handle it when you find that you are? How do you handle the mold count as it goes up? Maybe you have a friend or a relative that suffers from various allergies. Well, you better call them on the phone and get them to watching this particular program because I have an interesting panel with me, and you're going to have an opportunity in just a few moments to interact. Yes, to call in and become directly involved with your questions or your comments. But first, I want you to meet the panel that I have with me, and we're going to start right here with Dr. Howard Druce. Would you go ahead and tell them where you're from and a little bit about yourself?
My name's Dr. Howard Druce, and I'm Assistant Professor of Internal Medicine at St. Louis University Medical School. And I trained in allergies, allergy research at the National Institutes of Health, and currently I am running a laboratory at St. Louis U to study allergic diseases of the nose and the sinuses.
Right. And Dr. Barry?
I'm Dr. Barry Zephyrin, and I did my medical school training at St. Louis University, did my allergy training there as well, and in addition to being a clinical instructor in the Department of Allergy at St. Louis University, I'm also in private practice in Southern Illinois.
And my name is Dr. Linda Kodish, and I'm currently an allergy fellow at St. Louis University and did my medical school training at St. Louis University as well.
I'm going to begin by asking some very basic questions from you all, and along with our viewing audience. Maybe a lot of people out there really don't know. They're not familiar with allergies. They haven't suffered from such. Could you fill them in a little bit?
Yes, Larry. An allergy is an abnormal reaction to a common substance in the environment, such as pollen, house dust, a bee sting, all sorts of foreign proteins that exist in the environment and come into contact with our bodies. Now, most people don't have any reaction to these, but some people have a tendency to overreact. These people often inherit this tendency from their parents, and these people display allergies. The reason that they do this is that when these proteins come into contact with the immune system in their body, cells produce antibodies which in turn react with other cells called mast cells and produce chemicals which make you sneeze, cause blocked nose, perhaps cause wheezing in people with asthma. So we get a whole range of allergic diseases which are produced by these foreign particles in the air.
Barry, a couple of weeks ago, there's a lot of talk about the mold count and how it was making it miserable for people. Could you elaborate?
Yeah, just a few comments about that. There's no question that it's routine for St. Louis in general to be a bad place for people who suffer from mold. We live in a low altitude. We have a high degree of humidity and a great deal of moisture, so mold in general is always a problem in St. Louis. Now, one thing that's different this year as opposed to last year is that the technique that the county health department is using to measure the mold count in the area has changed change to a more sensitive technique. So this year we're getting extremely high counts for several reasons. Number one, the atmospheric environment has been such that it's been a bumper crop for mold. Secondly, because of the increased sensitivity of the technique that they're using this year, we are picking up molds that we never picked up before. And thirdly, many of these molds that we're picking up aren't clinically significant. So to some degree, the high counts are significant in that it does indicate the fact that we do have a higher volume of mold within the environment, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's dramatically different than previous years. It's just that our technique of counting is improving.
Linda, can people be allergic to things, not know about it? Suddenly they find themselves sneezing or rashes break out?
Well, they certainly can. I mean, it's difficult sometimes to put your finger on the things that people are truly allergic to. And it takes a good, careful clinical history by someone who knows exactly what to look for at times to determine what things they're really allergic to. And a good clinical history combined with some skin testing measures can sometimes be helpful in bringing to light what can suddenly be a problem for someone.
Howard, we hear people think about allergies, think about breaking out with a rash, they think about somebody sneezing. What are other effects if somebody's allergic to something?
There are several other forms of allergies which can affect the whole body. First of all, affecting the lungs is asthma. Certain patients who have asthma are more sensitive to certain types of pollen or to molds or to dust, and their asthma is made worse by these things in the environment. Another important form of allergy is the allergy to insect stings, and 40 people each year, it's estimated, die because of their contact with bees or with other insects. Other types of allergy are produced by drugs. One can find that penicillin, for example, is the most common drug to cause an allergic reaction. And this can vary from a skin rash to sudden death if somebody develops a very severe, rapid reaction to penicillin. Then there are other forms of allergies which are more difficult to study, such as allergies to food. A lot of people are intolerant to food. They get stomach upsets with food, but other people get immediate reactions to foods, and these may be caused by allergic disease. And then there are the diseases which are manifest as hives. We all experience hives, itching, raised spots on the skin, and these can be part of an allergic process also.
Okay, we're going to be asking more questions about that in just a moment, but I want to involve you, give you an opportunity, yes, an opportunity to help host this program through your questions. And all you need to do is to just get up and go to the phones along with me over here. We have phone operators that are here that will be happy to take your questions, and in addition to that, we'll give you an opportunity to ask the panel questions, and you can directly talk to them. Yes, you can talk to them right now. The phone number is 1-800-334-3276. That's toll-free anywhere in the state of Missouri. That's 1-800-334-3276. In the St. Louis area, if you have questions, 436-2424. That's 436-2424. And then over in the Illinois area, 1-800-242-3276 and 274-3777. In addition to our regular counselors who take phones and offer direct counseling, we do have people that are fully qualified right over here on the phones that can answer your questions while I'm talking to the panel. Tell us your name.
This is Greg Julien. I'm one of the medical residents at St. Louis University.
And you're quite familiar with this subject, are you?
Oh, definitely.
Okay. And if somebody called in, had a particular question, you'd be happy to try to answer it. You'll write it up and give the panel the opportunity to respond also to see if you said it right?
We'll try, do our best.
Okay. Feel free to call. They're right over here on the phones, and they'll be happy to talk to you directly. And in addition to that, we'll give the panel an opportunity to respond to your question. And what is your name?
Mary Romano.
And Mary, you are quite familiar with this subject too, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I'm the clinical nurse specialist at Cardinal Glennon Children's Hospital.
Well, that's great, and you handle this particular subject, allergies, quite a bit.
Immunology, yes.
Well, it looks like you're getting a phone call. I better let you grab it. And I want to encourage you to feel free to call. So if you have a question, just get up, go to the phones, and call in. Allergies. Are you allergic to something? Maybe you have a side effect. Maybe you want to know if you're allergic. Well, go ahead and give our phone operators a call, and they'll write up the questions. I'll pass them on to the panelists here a little bit. But they're also fully qualified down there to really answer those questions right on the spot also. But we're going to go on here and talk just for a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about being allergic to certain things and what can be done about it. In fact, what can be done? What do you as a doctor do?
Good question. People who suffer from allergies are living in a good time in that there have been dramatic advances made both in diagnostic techniques, the ability to determine what someone is allergic to or if they're allergic, and most importantly in the treatment of allergies. In the first place, what a physician does, getting back to what Dr. Linda Kodesh commented on earlier, the important thing is taking the history and getting the proper information, doing the physical exam, and then supporting that information with the proper diagnostic techniques, usually in the case of an allergist, the form of scratch skin testing. Once all that information is acquired and you made your determination, then it depends on what area of the body you're dealing with. You're dealing with the nose, typical hay fever. There are a variety of new long-acting antihistamine decongestants, and most recently, within the last month, there's been the development of a new antihistamine which doesn't put you to sleep, which is a big boon. In addition to that, there are other forms of nasal sprays, and I caution the public these are not the nasal sprays one buys over the counter in the drugstore, but are ones that are prescribed by your physician, which have been very helpful in the treatment of allergic diseases of the nose. In the treatment of asthma, again, long-acting preparations of a medication called theophylline, a variety of inhaled medications, which just allows someone who suffers from asthma to really lead almost a normal lifestyle in over 90% of the cases. I can go on, but those are the main areas where I think there's been just a tremendous amount of progress.
Well, we'll talk about that more as time goes on. Linda, what about hives? Is it a result of simply being allergic to something, or can nerves bring about hives?
There are many different causes of hives, and we kind of classify hives in two categories. There are just the acute hives that you have, and then when hives have gone on for longer than 6 weeks, we call it chronic hives or chronic urticaria. And some of the things that can cause hives are foods. That's one type of thing. Drugs or medications can cause hives. You can also get what we call physical urticaria or hives, which you can get from heat or cold or pressure in a particular place. And then there are also a variety of things that we can see hives in some chronic illnesses. We can also see hives in chronic infection as well. So there are a variety of causes. I imagine a lot of people are most familiar with foods really as causing hives.
Let's talk about ragweed. We hear a lot about it. We hear the problems that it causes people. Why? Why so much about ragweed and not some other kind of weed?
Well, there are a variety of weeds that cause allergies, but ragweed is so abundant, and for some reason the protein in ragweed is more sensitive to people with allergies. The ragweed plant has been dissected and it's been analyzed for its different proteins, and for some reason the protein in ragweed doesn't like us, and why, we just don't know.
Does it serve any useful purpose, ragweed?
Well, I don't really know of any.
But it causes an awful lot of problems for people.
It does, because it's so abundant. And one area particularly it's abundant on the highways. And so we counsel patients who are sensitive to ragweed when they drive that they should keep their windows closed and drive with their air conditioners on. But ragweed's everywhere. There are very few places in the United States that don't get ragweed.
Barry, are there other type of weeds like ragweed? He touched on a few, but that are in abundance.
There are, but not to the same degree that ragweed. Ragweed, particularly in this area, is the most common and the most significant in terms of causing clinical symptoms in those people who are allergic to ragweed.
Are there other things? We talk about a lot of abundance of ragweed. What are other things?
Well, you can go through any time of the year and find particular things that are in the environment that people can be susceptible to. Starting off in the spring, the typical time of the year that people complain about, beginning in March and extending into the end of May is what we typically call the tree season. The reason being that's the time of the year that the wind-blown pollen from trees in the area pollinate, so that people who have developed a sensitivity to trees will have difficulty that time of the year. You then move into the summer, beginning in June, going into the mid part of July is typically known as the grass season. Again, for the same reason, that's the time the grass pollinates. Then you go into mid-August, which is ragweed season, extending into early October. And if unfortunately you're a mold sufferer, you can have difficulty from the beginning of the spring anytime until the first frost. Now, the most interesting thing is that people seem to relate allergies strictly to the spring, summer, and possibly the fall times of the year. But the winter is not really a haven for all people. There are allergens or things that people become allergic to within their own home environment. Most importantly, there is house dust. And within the house dust, a very important little fella called the house dust mite, which is a microscopic bug to which people can develop a specific sensitivity to. Those individuals may be worse in the winter, as well as other individuals who are sensitive to, unfortunately, their home pets, cats, dogs. The winter, the house gets closed up, the pets spend more time in the house. That can be also a troublesome time of the year. So there are things that are existing throughout the year that can really cause difficulty.
Linda, let's talk about the subject of what if you go to a doctor and you suddenly get a medication you're allergic to? Howard made reference to the fact that it can actually kill you. This could make people quite concerned about taking new types of medication.
Well, that's true. It is unusual that someone has a reaction that's to that degree. And you need to be very careful when you go to your physician that you know exactly what the medications are that are being prescribed. And that, as they say, that you're careful not to take medications that have bad interactions between them or among a variety of medications. You also need to be very careful if you've had some kind of a reaction in the past that you make your physician aware of that so that they can carefully choose medications for you.
You mentioned penicillin. Why is penicillin a problem?
Penicillin reacts with the body in a specific way in that, like most agents that cause allergy, it interacts with these cells called mast cells, which I mentioned before. The way in which part of the penicillin molecule reacts with the mast cell occasionally produces a reaction that is very immediate and severe, and some of the chemicals that are released from these cells are very injurious to the body. And if these are released throughout the body, they can cause a drop in blood pressure, they can cause difficulty breathing, and in rare cases, they can cause death. But we're not talking about